Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle, and in this March Mystery Madness video, I want to have a little bit of a discussion about a trope in mysteries that I really quite enjoy if it's done well. So I want to talk about the gathering of the suspects at the end of the books. Now, I'm going to do my very best not to do any spoiling when I talk about certain books, I'm just putting that out there. There's no spoiling, but I do want to talk a bit about that gathering of the suspects. But before we get to that, I need to show you the book that I found that fit yesterday's prompts. Yesterday, we were given the prompts of a cover that had brown on it, and the book that was written or set pre-1900. So I am going for The Darkening Glass by Paul Doherty. Now this is sort of brown, although I guess you could say it's more orange, but there's brown on the edge and even brown in the picture. So I'm gonna call that brown. This book is set in 1312, so it's definitely pre-1900. This is a book set during the time when King Edward II is on the throne. As dark forces challenge Edward II's throne, will the king prevail? I quite enjoy this series. There's only 3 or 4 maybe in this series. So it's a time of civil war. Edward II is in conflict with his barons over royal favorite Gaveston, and Queen Isabella is momentously pregnant with the first union of Plantagenet and Capetian blood. Meanwhile, rebel Robert Bruce prowls the Scottish border seeking advancement. Yeah, so this is a good historical mystery. Alright, stay tuned to the end of the video when I will do another round of our M&M manuscript matchup game. Okay, so the gathering of the suspects, the great reveal, the drawing room conclusion. I love this trope in mysteries. I just find it so entertaining and so satisfying to have everybody together in a room and to just lay out the case and reveal a murderer. That's my ideal gathering of the suspects situations. So as I was thinking about that trope, I got thinking about the components. What are the components that to me make a great reveal? Well, first of all, if it takes place at the scene of the crime, that just adds so much to the tension and the atmosphere in the scene. I also love it when all the suspects are there. You've gathered everybody. You still don't know who the killer is, but everybody is there. All the possibilities are in the room. I love it when the detective outlines the case and the lines of inquiry they took to reach their conclusion. They just lay it all out. I like it when they make a case for each suspect. So this is like the big, everybody is accused and, might get offended or whatever, but, the detective is revealing that a case could be made for all the suspects. And I like that style of mystery where there are enough suspects that all have motives that could have done it. So when the case is made for each of the suspects, and during that case then, red herrings and all of those things are cleared up. Lies and misunderstandings, because what often comes up in a mystery is other things that are happening. There's things that people want to hide, other crimes that have been committed, lies that have been told for other reasons. And I love it when all that stuff comes back up and is cleared away until all you're left with is the truth of who killed the person who was killed. I do also find it very entertaining if there is a seemingly impossible accusation where the detective says, the killer was you, and everybody else is like, what? That can't be right. They have an alibi or whatever. So yeah, I do enjoy that as well. And then I also like, and this doesn't happen every time, but I do enjoy when the evidence appears to be building up against someone who is innocent in the end, but that forces someone else who cares about them, the killer who cares about them, to confess. And so I do enjoy that as well. So what books have some of my favorite gathering of the suspects. Well, I have to start with The Mysterious Affair at Styles by Agatha Christie. This book was published in 1920 and is her very first book and her very first Poirot. And she has a gathering of the suspects at the end of this book. And I'm not 100% certain about this, but I think that this book may be the first time that was done. If you know of a book that was published before 1920 where they gather the suspects at the end, please let me know in the comment section down below, because I would love to look into that. So in The Mysterious Affair at Styles, we are introduced to Hercule Poirot, we are introduced to Hastings, there is a death at Styles, that's the name of the house, and at the very end, Poirot gathers all of the suspects together. So at the very end, we read this: "Madame, I have your permission to hold a little reunion in the salon. It is necessary for everyone to attend." Still beaming, Poirot marshaled us all into the drawing room, bringing forward chairs as he did so. And so he seats everyone, and then he says, the company once assembled, Poirot rose from his seat with the air of a popular lecturer and bowed politely to his audience. "Messieurs and Mesdames, as you all know, I was called in by Monsieur John Cavendish to investigate this case." And then he proceeds to lay it all out. So I love that, and as far as I know, this is the first time that that happens. I also enjoy, there are a couple other examples of Agatha Christie's books with the gathering of the suspects that I really enjoy. One of them here is Appointment with Death. Now what's interesting with this one, this is also a Poirot. This is from the 30s. This is from 37. And there is the gathering of the suspects at the end, but with a few little changes. And I'm okay with that, because, you know, that's what makes all of this so interesting, when you have a trope and then you play around with it a little bit. "My preparations are complete," said Hercule Poirot. With a little sigh, he stepped back a pace or two and contemplated his arrangement of one of the unoccupied hotel bedrooms. So then he brings everybody in and he gathers them together. When he had taken his place, Poirot stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "this is an entirely informal gathering. It has come about through the accident of my presence in Amman." Now, in this one, what's different in this one is it does not take place at the scene of the crime, because in Appointment with Death, Poirot never actually visits the scene of the crime. The murder happens at Petra. People have gone out to Petra to see that area, whereas Poirot had stayed behind in Amman, I think. And so the death happens and then everyone comes back, and so they are all in a hotel. But also differently in this one, not every single person who was at the scene of the crime is at this gathering of the suspects. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. I also really enjoy the gathering of the suspects in Murder on the Orient Express, which is another Hercule Poirot, also from the 30s. This is from 34. And so of course this one is a classic closed circle mystery, because the murder happens on a train that has been stopped because of snow, and no one has come on and no one has left the train. "The passengers came crowding into the restaurant car and took their seats round the tables. They all bore more or less the same expression, one of expectancy mingled with apprehension." And what's interesting with the drawing room conclusion on this one is that Poirot does lay out the case like he does often, but in this book he proposes two solutions, so that's very interesting. Then there are a couple others that I really enjoy. This is The Affair of the Mutilated Mink Coat by James Anderson. This is almost a send-up of the genre. This book was written in 1981, and it's set in the 30s. It's set in an English country house, and it has all the elements that you have come to know and love of a golden age fair play mystery. But there are times when you feel like the author is taking that standard and playing with it, or being very lighthearted about it. I love this book. It is very, very entertaining. And one thing that I absolutely love is what the author does with the drawing room conclusion at the end. Because in this book, there are actually two. Because there are the gathering of the suspects with two different detectives, which is so interesting. So then you have the detective from the big city who was brought in to investigate because it was felt that the local detective didn't have the experience to investigate the murder. And so you have everyone gathered. Allgood moved to the center of the room and surveyed his audience. "This has been a quite interesting little case," he said, teasing without being too baffling. "It was complicated by a number of strange incidents which preceded the actual murder, and I intend to start by looking at those." And so the detective proceeds to go on and do the classic drawing room conclusion where he lays out a case, clears away all the detritus, and reveals the killer. But what's so fantastic, and I guess this is a bit of a spoiler, but he gets it wrong. And so then the local detective, it was at that moment that Chief Inspector Wilkins cleared his throat. Wilkins' intervention wasn't a particularly dramatic one, but it brought every eye in the room instantly round to him. He stepped forward. "I'm afraid Mr. Allgood's rather got hold of the wrong end of the stick," he said. And then he proceeds to lay out his case and reveal the killer. So it's brilliant. I love it. It's so good. All right, and then another book that has a great drawing room conclusion or gathering of the suspects is Death Knocks Twice by Robert Thorogood. This is part of his Death in Paradise series and was published in 2017. This is a locked room mystery. And so then he does the gathering of the suspects, and in this case, actually at the scene of the crime, which is brilliant. All right, so by now they were all gathered. Hugh Beaumont, Sylvie Beaumont, their two adopted children, Tom and Matthew, the family's one-time nanny, Rosie, and the semi-criminal Andy Lucas. "Thank you all for meeting me here," Richard said. "What choice did we have?" Tom said. "Indeed," Richard said with what he knew wasn't even the beginnings of a smile. "But what do you want with us?" Sylvie said. "I want to tell you who killed the people who get killed. But first, let me tell you how we all ended up here." So what's great about this drawing room conclusion is it's classic in the sense that it takes place at the scene of the crime. The suspects are all gathered. He lays out the case. But because this is a modern day one, it's less likely that someone is just going to blurt out a confession. In more modern day mysteries, people know their rights and they know maybe like that how important actual evidence is. And so he knows that there's some evidence, he just doesn't have it yet, and he has sent off his two officers to go look for it. But when he starts his great reveal, he doesn't have that evidence yet. So it's this great tension at the very end of, will the evidence arrive in time? Is it where he thinks it is? Is the evidence there? And if not, is he able to bluff and force a confession? So it's this great added tension at the end. There was a couple other books that I read that had drawing room conclusions that were more recently published as well. So there's Death in the Family by Tessa Wegert, which is an isolated closed circle mystery. And that one was very entertaining because they do the great reveal at the end. And what's interesting there is that it's, in a lot of ways, a very classic gathering of the suspects, but it ends a little bit differently. We also have Death Comes to the Rectory by Catherine Lloyd, which is a historical mystery. And so that one is great because Robert, the amateur sleuth in that one, he plans to set out his case for everyone, hoping that a recitation of the facts might just persuade someone to reveal the truth. It takes place in a drawing room, which is awesome because they're often called drawing room conclusions. All the facts are revealed, leading the killer to confess. However, one interesting aspect to this instance is that Robert didn't actually know who the killer was. He suspected a couple of people, and in the end he was wrong. So that one was great. So he had the confidence to try and bluff it out, even though he didn't 100% know who it was going to be. And then finally, in A Will to Kill by R.V. Raman, which is, I think, was published in 2020. It's set in India. And here's a quote. 12 people sat in the drawing room once more, this time in uneasy silence, not knowing what to expect from the gathering Athrea had called. I've called you all together now to conclude this sordid chapter in your lives. So very traditional, a very, very traditional gathering of the suspects. It says right in there that the purpose is to reveal the truth and lift the shadow of suspicion from the innocent. He starts with the motive and it outlines his investigation, how he cleared away the clutter, solving other crimes in the process. It also has that dramatic reveal of the killer. He is in this room right now. So yeah, that was brilliant. So let's chat in the comments down below. Do you like a good, great reveal at the end? Do you like that gathering of the suspects? Can you think of a book you've read recently where that happens? I would love to know about more of them. And if you know of one that was published before 1920, please let me know because I think that would be really interesting to find as well. I'd be really curious to know if Agatha Christie did invent that trope because as it turns out, that is a really popular trope for mysteries. Okay, and before I go, let's play another round in my M&M manuscript matchup game. Oh dear. One fell out and it went under the sofa. I'll have to remember to get that later. Okay, orange gives us detective. And blue gives us professional detective. All right, so we're going to need to find a book with a professional detective. Brown is miscellaneous. And brown again is and murder. Okay, so what's fun with that is that often in the synopsis on the back, sometimes in the tagline on the front, they do this and murder or death. Do you know what I mean? Let's see if any of these have that kind of a description. Let's see. So none of these ones do, but I think you know what I mean. So we need to look for a book that has a professional detective and has that kind of description in the synopsis on the back. And murder. Okay, so good luck to you. I would love to hear what you find, what book you find that fits those prompts. If you could put that in the comment section down below. And I will see you for another video soon. Bye.